They said it started sometime before dawn. No one remembers the exact hour because clocks still worked, but time didn't feel real anymore. In the small town of Rutherford, Nebraska, people woke up to something they couldn't quite describe. Not fear, not confusion, just absence. The wind wasn't blowing. The trees weren't moving. Even the electric hum that fills every silent night was gone. It wasn't just quiet. It was absolute silence. The first calls came to the sheriff's office around 6:30 a.m. Reports of a strange stillness, missing birds, no sound of the highway. Deputy Collins drove out to the old gas station on Route 9. He later said he didn't realize what was wrong until he closed his car door, and there was no thud. Just air. Thick. Empty. By 8 o'clock, the whole town had gathered outside, staring at a motionless sky. Not gray, not blue, just pale, like color itself had thinned out. A few people tried yelling, but their own voices felt smothered, swallowed before leaving their mouths. One woman, Mary Tilden, later wrote in her diary that she screamed until her throat hurt, and yet it sounded like she was underwater. She said she could feel her vocal cords vibrate, but nothing came out. The air wasn't moving, not even enough to carry sound. For a while, everyone thought it was some kind of atmospheric anomaly. Maybe radiation, maybe a military experiment. The local radio station tried to broadcast, but when people turned their dials, all they heard was static without static, a silent hiss. It wasn't until noon that the first real panic began. Dogs refused to bark. Cows didn't moo. The church bell rang at midday, and it moved visibly, shaking, but no one heard it. People covered their ears instinctively, expecting a sound that never came. And that's when they realized it wasn't just sound that was gone. It was vibration. It was resonance. It was the breath of the world. Some tried to drive out of town, but their engines failed one after another, not because of fuel or mechanics. The machines worked, but they made no sound, no pulse, as if combustion itself had lost its will to echo. A man named Peter Harris recorded a video on his phone before the battery drained. In it, he points at the sky. He mouths the words, "Can you hear this?" Then he looks confused, because when he replays the footage, even the wind on the microphone is gone. Not muted, erased. That clip was found later in a burned-out phone at the edge of the woods. No one knows who uploaded it. By afternoon, people started to feel physical symptoms. Pressure in the ears, vertigo. Some said they could feel the world humming inside their bones, a faint rhythm, like their heartbeat was syncing with something beneath the ground. And then came the sky. At sunset, it didn't darken the way it should. It just dimmed, as if the sun had sunk without moving. The clouds were suspended like frozen waves, glowing faintly from below. When the streetlights flickered on, their bulbs pulsed irregularly, flashes like Morse code in a dead language. Someone said it looked like the sky was trying to speak. That night, the silence grew heavier. People said it wasn't quiet anymore. It was dense, as if sound had weight, and now the world was collapsing under its absence. Phones stopped working around 9. The power grid followed. But even in the dark, people claimed they could see movement above. Not shapes, not lights, but distortions, like the air itself was folding. A child wrote in chalk on the pavement the next morning,
The sky is breathing, but not for us. No one knows who taught him that phrase, or if he heard it somehow.
By the second day, Rutherford was no longer a town. It was an echo chamber for nothingness. The roads out were blocked by cars left running but unmoving. The fuel pumps still ticked, meters still turned, but they made no sound, no pulse. The entire landscape was trapped in a constant inhale that never became an exhale. People tried to leave on foot. Most came back before nightfall. They said the silence outside town was worse, thicker, like walking through invisible water. Some claimed that when they reached the edge of the county line, the ground seemed to tilt. The horizon bent just slightly, as if space itself was folding inward. Local scientists from the university in Omaha arrived on the third day. They brought instruments, microphones, seismographs. None of them worked. One of them wrote in her notes, "We are measuring silence. It's not absence, it's presence. The absence is what's consuming the sound." The phrase appeared again, scratched into the floor of her motel room later that week. The silence is alive. By then, people had stopped talking altogether. There was no point. Even when they screamed, the air didn't care. Instead, they began writing notes, leaving them on doors and windshields, whole conversations written on paper, questions with no answers. What caused it? Was it global? Was it punishment? Was it the end? One message found near the grocery store simply read, "It's not outside the air, it's inside us." On the fifth day, a thin vibration started to return. At first, people felt it through the soles of their feet, a low, deep pulse, like a tremor far below the crust. It wasn't sound, but pressure. Some thought it was relief, a sign the world was healing. Others knew it wasn't. Birds appeared again that morning, not flying, but scattered across fields and roofs, completely still. Their wings half open, their eyes glazed, as if caught between flight and fall. And when the sun rose, it didn't cast shadows. It was there, bright, harsh, but it didn't warm anything. The scientists who stayed behind tried one last experiment. They placed a metal rod into the soil and hooked it to a recording device. What came through wasn't silence anymore. It was a hum, a rhythm too low to be natural. It pulsed in patterns, 7 beats, pause, 5 beats, pause, repeating endlessly. No one could explain it, but one of the researchers looked pale when he slowed it down and amplified the data. He said it wasn't random. It was a voice, not speaking, breathing. That night, something else changed. The stars disappeared. Not behind clouds, they simply went out, one by one, as if the universe had stopped projecting them. The sky became a single dull expanse, not black, not empty, just blank. And people began dreaming of the same thing, a horizon stretching infinitely, a faint pulse like a heartbeat beneath their feet, and something standing there. Not a creature, not a god, just a shape, so vast it filled the sky, but had no edges. Weeks passed, though no one could say how many. Time had become as still as the air. When the emergency teams arrived from Lincoln, the town was already empty. Houses were left open, dinners half-eaten, lights still glowing from generators that somehow hadn't stopped. The clocks in every home showed different hours, yet the same minute, 12:07. No one knew why. The rescue teams reported strange interference, not with radios or sensors, but inside themselves. One described it as hearing with my bones. Another said that while walking near the church, she felt a pulse coming from the ground, slow and patient, as if the earth was counting something. Inside the church, they found the last note. It was written on the altar in charcoal. The sound didn't die, it hid. The investigator who found it said the air around the writing felt warm, like breath. He never spoke again after that. Satellite footage showed that the town had dimmed from orbit, as though the atmosphere itself had turned opaque. The area became known among analysts as the quiet zone. Attempts to study it failed. Drones lost signal. Microphones recorded nothing but a deep, continuous vibration. Months later, a single audio file was recovered from one of the scientists' backup drives. It was 1 hour long, marked only with the date, August 12th. Most of it was silence, but near the end, faintly, there was something else, a low, distant exhale, followed by the sound of waves. There is no ocean within hundreds of miles of Rutherford. Some think it was the last echo of the universe correcting itself. Others believe the silence never left, that it simply spread, thin and invisible, waiting for the next place to stop breathing. Those who've listened to the files say it changes every time. Sometimes there's only the hum. Sometimes you can hear footsteps. And once in a while, if you turn the volume high enough, you can hear a voice whispering between the static. Not words, just a question. A question without sound. And maybe that's the point. Maybe the silence was never a curse, nor a punishment, nor a message. Maybe it was something far older, a truth the universe had been trying to say since the beginning, that everything, from the smallest breath to the loudest storm, was only temporary. For a moment, the world stopped pretending to make sense, and what we called silence was simply existence, stripped of its illusions. The wind would return, the birds would sing again somewhere else. But Rutherford remained still, a monument to the moment when reality forgot how to echo. In the end, the sound didn't vanish. It paused, and the universe was holding its breath.